Okay, my YouTube channel was originally supposed to be about the economy, but there's so much going on in the property market in Australia, around the world, and just my recent video was on New Zealand property. I'll link it in the show notes. But so going back to property, my aim is that at the end of each video we all are more wiser. We know at least a little bit more what to do with our money, what not to do with our money, how not to lose money. Remember Warren Buffett's famous 2 rules were rule number 1, don't lose money, and rule number 2, do not forget about rule number 1. So to quickly let you know what this video is going to be about, there's so much information I'm going to share with you here, but this video and I'm going to try and keep it as short as possible. I don't like going on forever. So first we'll see how the confidence has actually dropped and how the affordability of housing is definitely lowest ever. Then we'll see what our politicians have to say, because the great arse covering has begun, in my opinion, and not just my opinion, because I'm going to share a little Commonwealth Bank video or the Facebook's video ad the Commonwealth Bank has there. It's only 30 seconds or maybe 50 seconds, but it's very telling. And then we have an article that I'm going to read out to you that says young Australians better off renting than buying a home, says economist Chris Richardson. That's an interesting one. And then housing market top called by investment bank UBS, also on ABC News. And finally, I'm going to share this article with you and read out just the gist of it from macrobusiness.com.au, titled "The Great Housing Bubble Arse Covering Begins."
We surveyed over 67,500. We surveyed over 67,500 properties, and we found very little that was affordable anywhere. For example, if you're a single parent living on Newstart, you wouldn't have been able to find anything that was affordable in Canberra or Brisbane, Adelaide, Hobart, Darwin, and even regionally it's not much better. Again, if you were a single person on a minimum wage, anywhere in the country, out of those 67,500 properties that we looked at, only 2.8% would have been available to somebody on the minimum wage. So it's actually right across the country, metro and regional. What we see is people making dreadful choices about trying to find somewhere that they can call home. And certainly in the immediacy, we see people making very bad financial decisions that they're forced to make, going without food sometimes, avoiding doctor's appointments, not insuring the family car, which of course is a disaster if you live in a regional area, if you're trying to keep or find work.
Yeah, welcome to the lucky country down under, Australia. People making dreadful decisions, big financial mistakes, people not going to the doctors so they can buy a house. The great Australian dream. I think it's a joke. It's a dream of the bankers. It's a wet dream of the bankers and the government, where everybody wants to get in on this property Ponzi, where everybody benefits except the actual people buying it. What about politicians? What are they babbling about? Let's see.
It takes a very special plan to actually drive up housing prices by increasing demand, as well as undermining Australia's retirement income system. This would actually overheat the housing market even more, and the only winners would be vendors who would have 2 first home buyers with access to super outbidding each other, spending their superannuation money. This is just the latest Liberal attempt to undermine Australia's superannuation system. Malcolm Turnbull once said it was a thoroughly bad idea. Matthias Cormann said it was a bad idea as late as last month, and yet Scott Morrison, flailing around trying to find some answer on housing affordability when he refuses to use the main lever at his disposal, negative gearing reform, means that he appears to be intent on giving Australia a thoroughly bad policy, which, let me be clear, Virginia, Labor will oppose with every ounce of energy and with every capacity at our availability in the Parliament and in the community.
That was obviously about the recent proposal and the debate about allowing people to use their superannuation, which is Australia's savings plan, to buy their first home. And to be honest, Chris Bowen, I'm impartial as far as the parties. I don't believe in the left and right and Labor and Liberals, but he's right here, probably only because he's opposing to what government is proposing, and that is to use the super for the housing, because that is only good for vendors, meaning that the prices would just go up even more. Because I always say, whatever the benefit is, whatever the government, the free money the government gives or policy that implements, that's the amount of which by the prices on average of the housing will rise. And here's that Facebook Commonwealth Bank's ad on Facebook that starts off saying that 53% of people don't believe the housing dream of property is still a reality. You know what? They're not wrong. Yeah, that's if you assume that you, again, want to buy. Oh, but I have to get onto the property ladder. Well, maybe you don't if you listen to this guy. And let me just read out quickly the summary of this article titled "Young Australians Better Off Renting Than Buying a Home," says economist Chris Richardson. Young Australians will be better off renting than trying to purchase a property given record prices in capital cities, according to one of Australia's most respected economists. Deloitte Access Economics' Chris Richardson used his speech at the National Press Club on Wednesday to offer some advice to those seemingly locked out of the property market. He goes on to say, although there are elements of rental stress and governments can be involved in helping to do things around that, let's not forget that the rents today make a lot more sense than housing prices. His comments come as a proposal to allow young people to access their superannuation to purchase a home, causes growing division in the coalition, with some praising the idea and others describing it as madness. The next article is also from ABC News, and is titled "Housing Market Top Called by Investment Bank UBS." The Australian housing market has peaked in the opinion of economists from global investment banking giant UBS. The bank's economics team said it usually takes rising official interest rates to stop the upward phase of a property cycle, but this very lengthy boom may be different. While the historical trigger for a housing downturn of RBA hikes is missing, mortgage rates are rising and sentiment of home buying collapsed to a near low record, wrote these economists. Hence, we are calling the top, but stick to our forecasts for the dwelling construction commencements to correct but not collapse to 200,000 in 2017 and 180,000 in 2018. Skipping forward, the article says, however, UBS said the residential building boom will top out at roughly current levels in the second half of this year before starting to ease off next year. The bank said its forecast is supported by an international crane count, with the number of cranes on Australian high-rise sites levelling out at a peak of 548, having surged 323% since the late 2013. Let that sink in. There are 548 cranes currently in Australia. That's a relative number. It sounds like a high number, but we know it's high because it's 323% higher than it was in the late 2013. If this isn't that exponential uptick where everybody goes berserk, builders are building any way and anyhow they know, just to cash in to this final uptick in the housing market, where again there's no video where we can't mention the Chinese investors, because I think I read somewhere that close to 80% of these are actually bought up by the Chinese money. So they know that this is going to dry up, so might as well get in there while you can. This is what I think builders are doing at the moment. Oh, but wait, there's good news. The article goes on to say, while we see a sharp correction for activity, which would not be unusual following a prolonged boom, and we still don't expect a collapse of prices, which would have a broader negative feedback loop for the labor market and the economy, the investment bank predicted. But wait, after that good news, they give you a little bit of reassurance that it's not all good news. Although generally sanguine around the risk of a housing slump due to strong population growth and stable employment, UBS did warn that there are elevated risks of something going wrong due to Australia's high housing prices and record household debt. So don't worry, everything's okay. We've got a lot of people coming in, but wait, there's a great and elevated risk of something going wrong. This is what they said, something going wrong due to Australia's high housing prices and record household debt. What could go wrong? And finally, this fantastic article from macrobusiness.com.au, the great housing bubble arse-covering begins. This is a very, very long article, so I'm definitely not going to go through it all, but I'll post the link there if you want to know more. But as some sort of a conclusion to it, the author says, if I were a highly leveraged property investor, I'd be starting to get very worried about now. If they haven't been listening so far, they must surely be starting to sit up and take notice. In the last month alone, in chronological order, this is what's been happening, and he provides links to all of these. So a United Nations report concluded that the financialization of housing is the key determinant of inequality. All four big banks are hiking mortgage rates out of cycle, targeting investors. Parliamentary Budget Office costed a plan to abolish stamp duty in favour of broad-based land tax. Beautiful. ASIC's chief Greg Medcraft declared the housing market a bubble. The next point, the RBA warned the household debt levels and house prices are endangering financial stability and damaging the economy. The next, property bubble called by economist and former Liberal leader John Hewson. Next point, yet another IMF, International Monetary Fund, report concluding the current household debt levels are an unprecedented problem in Australia. Unprecedented problem. Brisbane and Western Australian developers concluding the fire sale you have when you are not having a fire sale. Mortgage arrears continue to rise to cycle highs. APRA, which is a regulator, industry regulator, rolled out further microprudential tightening, this time targeting interest-only lending. ASIC joined APRA in interest-only home loan crackdown and scrutiny on mortgage lending standards. Treasury is rumoured to announce immigration cuts. Beautiful. Dwelling construction pipeline keeps building into the bust with massive pending oversupply in the major cities. The RBA detailed its deep concern over housing risk, backing tax reform and tightening on investor lending. wage growth and rental growth remain in the gutter. Final 4 points of this brilliant article by macrobusiness.com.au that I'm going to link below. Chairman of the Financial System Inquiry, David Murray, warns of 1890s style housing crash and depression. I've heard of this one. It's happened in Australia, and it links to more information on it. Next point, limits to negative gearing and capital gains tax concessions have been modelled by Treasury. APRA, which is Australian Prudential Regulatory Authority, announced that banks will need to hold more capital against their mortgage books, rising the cost of borrowing. And the final point is RBA, APRA and ASIC stand ready to tighten credit conditions further. So in the words of this article, everyone is covering their ass, and natural reaction to panic. Once again, the purpose of these videos is to educate myself, and in the process share this with as many people as I can. I try and not have an opinion in it, but it creeps up like we all do. I have a bias. There's a lot of information coming our way talking about this property bubble. There are many more points in this article, for example. So it can't be ignored. Make up your own mind. This is not financial advice by any stretch of imagination, because my expertise actually lies elsewhere. But I hope you found this useful. I wish you best of luck, and talk to you in the next one.